Christine Patterson, and on behalf of FieldPartner, I'd like to introduce you to our latest, what do I call you?
Addition to the team.
To our latest addition to the team, Ben Gilbert. Ben is coming on board as our new Dean of Studies, someone that we've prayed for and sought the Lord for a long, long time, it feels. Someone who's going to take on our raw material with what we've produced in FieldPartner and create a curriculum and create kind of cohorts and community. So I want to just talk a little bit with Ben about his background and about what attracted him to this role. And I look forward to sharing it with you. Okay, so thanks, Ben. Thanks,
Christine.
Thanks for joining me for this, but thanks even more for joining me or joining us on this team.
Yeah.
First of all, Shiani, your wife, has been working for us for a while on the social media side, and she then gave you our job description for the Dean of Studies. So what was it that made you feel, oh, this is me?
Yeah, so Shiani, first of all, thank you, Christine. It's nice to be here. Shiani gave me the job description, and I was looking into what FieldPartner was about, what your vision and your mission was all about. And a lot of your heart behind FieldPartner, first of all, before we even get to the job description, I think the heart behind FieldPartner in terms of equipping people who are working cross-culturally really kind of got under my skin, because as I'm a TCK, third culture kid, I was brought up in a culture not of my passport. And so just the material, the content, the things that you and Ross were speaking about, I was listening into Shiani doing some of the editing of the courses that you were producing. And I was like, there's a lot in this which I can relate to, just because I've been brought up in that whole kind of cross-cultural mission context. Mm-hmm. And then when Shiani shared the job description about training and putting cohorts of learners together, a lot of the things in the job description really matched much of the experience and the things that I've been doing anyway in my career history, mm-hmm. really up until that point. Education is my background. I started off as a teacher, moved into international development work, but throughout that whole process, training, working through sort of adult education mixed with online learning, working in cohorts, working with groups, creating ways to be able to engage across the internet, all of that kind of stuff. That's really what I've been involved with right. as part of my own work, professional work at various points in my life. So when I was reading the job description about the Dean of Studies, added to that the cross-cultural element, which kind of really fitted with me in terms of my background. I was thinking, you know what, I can really apply myself to this. And that's when Shiani, together we kind of thought about it, and that's where I approached you and Ross, and I thought, let me give it a go. Let's have a conversation and see where it goes.
Right. Yeah. And so even though all you can offer us is a year, we felt it was worth exploring. And so tell us, what do you hope to achieve in a year?
I hope, my dream for this would be to be able to create a platform, or to help co-create a platform, because it's not just me, it's working with lots of other people, yeah. which enables people to really learn and journey together and connect with information, content, training, which is very applicable to their context. Mm-hmm. And to make that easy for people to access, to make it enjoyable, to make it fun, to make it in a way which people want to come back. And through it all, I think, kind of as an umbrella, really just begin to, join in with the community that is already there, mm-hmm. but also really establish some of that FieldPartner community where people are learning from each other, sharing together, being vulnerable together in terms of, what are the challenges, what are the joys of working in mission, and then make that into offer that in line with FieldPartner's mission in terms of equipping people working in cross-cultural environments. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's wind back And can you tell us a bit more about your background and why you call yourself a third culture kid, and how come you landed up getting married to a girl from Sri Lanka?
Okay. Well, first of all, you know my parents very well, Rod and Ruthie Gilbert. And I wasn't born in India, but I was born in the UK and then moved to India when I was 1. But my parents had already been working in India by the time I was born. So they came back to the UK just for a short period when I was born. But everything I can remember, my earliest memories was being in India, where I was part of a missionary family. My brothers at the time, my sister came later, but those form my earliest memories as a child growing up. Mum and dad working for Scripture Union, and so I felt very much at home. Well, it was all I knew really, so I didn't really have anything to compare it with. That was life for me.
Right.
Quite early on, I was during a period where Mum and Dad were thinking about coming to work in an international school, Hebron School. They sent me to Hebron ahead of that time, which they'd probably be the first to admit that was a mistake.
How did it feel for you then?
It was that was horrible actually, and so I was about 5 or 6 years old at the time.
Wow. That's young.
And it was only 6 months that I went ahead, and my brother Luke, he was already there.
Right.
And I think at the time it was, I don't know the reason specifically why, but at the time it seemed logical for me to go ahead. I didn't stay in the boarding section, I stayed with the family. That probably was one of the hardest times in my sort of early childhood, because I was away from mum and dad and in this school, and it was just, really I just remember just crying. Just crying a lot and just being really homesick. But then mum and dad came and joined me in Hebron. And then I was a staff kid, me and my siblings, we were kind of living and going to school in Hebron. So I basically went to one school my entire life. So I started in year 1, I went all the way through to A-levels in Hebron, never changed schools. So that became a kind of quite sort of central theme of my life. I became quite, I guess, institutionalized by the time I left Hebron. And by and large, I had many happy memories of the later years in Hebron. I made some fantastic friends, some really deep, solid friendships who I'm still in good touch now. But I think there was a period of time where I was about 13, 14, where like something changed in my sort of faith element, because as I say, I was brought up in a very loving Christian home, missionary environment. I remember when I was 5, before I was sent to Hebron, I remember making a very early decision in my heart. I was praying a simple prayer, Jesus, come into my heart, when I was about 5. But when I was an early teenager, about 13, 14, my parents moved away from Hebron and I carried on boarding. And it was at that time that I couldn't really rely on my mum and dad's faith anymore. It was me really to have to decide, am I going to carry on kind of being a Christian, or am I just going to do something else? And it wasn't an easy period of my life, because I never really enjoyed being away from mum and dad. So it was like I did feel homesick at that time. But I also sort of went through a period of what I think of now maybe as almost some sort of depression, where I had like very dark thoughts kind of circulating in my mind. I didn't really understand what they were. And I was also very young teenager. And I tried to share it with people, but I never really felt that people could get it. And I just remember thinking, man, I feel so alone in this. I feel so alone. And that's really the point where I was like, Jesus, I need you to be real. I need you to be real in my life. And God, be real. And it's sort of through that pretty low period, kind of coming out the other end, I had made a pretty solid recommitment to God. So it was a gradual process. It wasn't an overnight thing.
So how long would you reckon it would take?
Probably a period of months. Probably
While you were still 13, 14?
Yeah, while I was 13, 14, mum and dad moving away and me moving into boarding. And then I left Hebron when I was 18 after I finished my A-levels, went back to the UK. And again, it was really God, I think, holding me through that. Rather than going straight into university, I had an opportunity to work in a sailing centre in the UK.
All right.
So I worked, it was a fantastic Christian sailing centre. And that was like a stepping stone back into my home country in a sense, because we had come back, we had visit the UK all the way through my childhood, but I never really knew where to call home, because in India I was always an outsider, really. Hebron it's this interesting kind of environment, because although it's in India, it's still very much a bubble. So I didn't speak an Indian language. I grew up speaking English. All my Indian friends spoke English, but it was American, Australian, English, Indian, all in the mix. So it's very international, but I didn't speak Tamil, like a few words of Tamil, a few words of Hindi that they would teach us, but because it was just an English speaking environment. So then when I left India, actually only when I left, more or less as an 18, 19-year-old, did I realize I'd kind of missed an opportunity as a child to immerse myself in a language, but you don't know at the time. As I say, I had nothing to compare it to. That's what life was.
Right.
So I came back, did that year in the sailing centre, and then went to university in the UK, and that was again another massive culture shock, because it was a bit like being in boarding school but with no rules or no regulation, no routine. I knew when my lectures were, but that was it, and then just...
And what were you studying?
I was studying geography, marine geography.
Okay.
So I did that as my undergrad degree, and it was just like, that was a hard time as well, because it was thrown into British culture, and everyone just wanted to drink and get drunk. Like that was kind of what I thought, like that's what it felt like. But I did make some good friends in uni, sort of sort out some really great friends.
Where were you studying?
In Cardiff, in Wales,
right,
yeah. But then at the same time, I got involved with the diving and cycling and caving and all sorts of stuff like that. So there's some really good times as well. But underlying that, there was the kind of sense of like, I don't feel like I'd fit here. And even when I got involved with the churches, they would have programs which were designed specifically for international students. So like Chinese students coming over or Indian students coming over. And then they would have programs for British, like home students, but I didn't fit with either
one, right?
I remember I went to the Indian Society once, just I thought, well, I'll go see what it's like. And they were like, "What are you doing here?" And so I felt like a real odd sort of misfit, and also my accent was different, because it obviously, to an English person, it wasn't English.
Or Welsh.
Or Welsh, yeah. And whenever I was in India, I obviously wasn't Indian, So my accent, it still is a bit mixed up, but I remember really struggling with that, because every time I opened my mouth, people would be like, "Well, where are you from?" And I never quite knew how to answer that question, because it was like, do I say?
Culture kid.
Yeah, and you'd make like a sort of instant decision in your head, like, do I just say Kent, England, or do I say, well, my parents, were working in India and I was brought up in India, and it's like, how long does this conversation need to be? So I was sort of a real sort of mixed, awkward sort of bag of different cultures and experiences. And then I did teacher training after my degree, did a PGC. And
also in Cardiff or somewhere
No,
else?
that was in Cambridge. I did that in Cambridge.
Okay.
And trained to be a primary school teacher. I taught for a little while in the UK. And again, not that I didn't enjoy teaching. I really loved the teaching element of it. But again, it was more the underlying culture that I didn't really fit with. Like just the like not have grown up in the UK, I just felt a little bit out of place. Like even teaching you like kids that were British kids, I felt sort of like I don't have that much in common with them. Like, you know, so it was this kind of strange thing. But I did my best at that. But then my mum and dad were working in Sri Lanka at the time. So I went out on holiday with the rest of my family. We met in Sri Lanka for Christmas, I think. And I saw a teaching job opportunity there. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I'll just apply for that and see what happens. So I got a job in an international school in Sri Lanka and started working in Sri Lanka. And that was the year of that huge South Asian tsunami, 2004, Christmas, Boxing Day. You know, as a family, we were in Sri Lanka at the time, not on the beach, up in the hill country. So I was teaching. My school was involved in some of the sort of relief work, and my parents' school as well. They were really involved in the relief work going on. And so I made this kind of transition at the time, like full on working for the school, but then at the same time getting involved in some of the relief work. And I joined a local NGO that was working with some of the families that were affected by the tsunami. And then another family member was there doing some business, so I got involved in that as well. So it was a real sort of mixed bag. During that time, I was attending a church in Colombo, the same one that Shiani was attending.
Right.
She was flying for Royal Jordanian Airlines at the time, so we barely...
What, as an air stewardess?
Yeah, as an air stewardess.
Yeah.
So we didn't really meet because we kept attending on different weeks. And then like one New Year's sort of church gathering, I saw Shiani. I still remember she was wearing this bright yellow sari. And then we kind of discovered that, you know, we knew the same group of friends. And really very quickly from there, I was like, yeah, this is definitely an amazing girl that I want to spend my life with. So that we got engaged quite quickly after that. Probably more because of me pushing rather than her sort of on her side.
I think she was probably fully on board.
yeah, she was eventually, yeah. So,
right. So after that, what? Did you stay in Sri Lanka?
So we stayed, we got married about a year, 18 months after we met, which was pretty quick really. We stayed for a little while in Sri Lanka. I got another teaching job in Colombo. But then we kind of made a decision as a couple. We wanted to go somewhere neutral, you know, because UK was, although it wasn't my home, like it was the place which I was familiar with. Sri Lanka was all of Shiani's family, and not all, but a lot of Shiani's family and relatives. So we thought, let's see if we can find somewhere neutral to work at. And I would always been sort of interested in working in the Middle East. Shiani had worked in Jordan for the airline. Yeah. So I got a job in Kuwait, out of all places. So I worked in Kuwait as a teacher.
As a teacher? What, in an international school?
Yeah, as a British international school.
Teaching what? And
primary
still
school.
Primary.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always primary, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the visa took a little bit of time for Shiani to get over to Kuwait, because, you know, all the hoops and things for a Sri Lankan to come over to Kuwait. But then we had an incredible year in Kuwait. We really thought we were going to give, you know, and really kind of minister and kind of, you know, like, we're kind of very naive. We didn't quite know what to expect, but the amount we received, it was kind of just God revealing himself to us through the people who were working there, through the church, through an incredible missionary couple who were working in Kuwait and who had been in the Middle East for a long time. They took us under their wing and we just spent, it was probably even just less than a year, but it didn't feel like that. It felt almost like, you know, 5 years of just intense experiencing God in a new way, moving miraculously, you know, and healings, and in this very Muslim context. So we learned a huge amount in that time, and just seeing another side of God moving, which we had been aware of but hadn't seen as sort of intensely as that period. And then experiencing that together as a married couple as well was a really good sort of launch into our marriage. It was a difficult time as well because just being away from both of our families, newly married, we went through typical struggles of a newly married couple.
Right.
But then also we soon discovered that it was just very impractical to be a British passport holder married to a Sri Lankan passport holder, because anytime we wanted to travel, we would...
One of you had to get a visa.
One of us had to get a visa, you know, and it was often Shiani who had to get a visa and get a police clearance from Colombo, and we just thought, you know, this is not going to work. Like we couldn't really go anywhere without, you know, weeks and weeks of preparation. So we thought, you know, let's come back to the UK, apply for Shiani's British residency or British passport. And so, yeah, we made that decision, you know, so we were only in Kuwait for a little while, came back to the UK, again, with no jobs, nothing. Shiani's sister was living in London at the time, so we kind of just camped on her floor for a couple of weeks. And my parents were out of the country, my brothers and my sister were, you know, all over the place. So we didn't really have many family, like close family in the UK.
So which year was this, Banna?
This was 2009, 2010.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we just decided to just make a life for ourselves in London and start the process of, you know, going through the passport process. At the time, it took us about 3 years to go from start to finish. But then life started to happen. We got ourselves a little flat in London, and we had our first child, like Malachi. He was born, and now we've got two. So we got Malachi and Laura, our daughter. And I would have never thought that 13 years later, that we would have still been here in the UK. Originally, we went, okay, let's just go sort out the passport. But it was clear during that time that, you know, one thing led to the other, and we sort of, you know, this is a time of investing in our own family, investing in time, giving us some roots. And for me, coming now, living here in Kings Mill, it's really the first time that I've been able to put down roots somewhere where I can say this is home, you know. And I think just for me personally, that's been a
lot of family history too.
A lot of family history, you know, as opposed to Shiani, where she's always been really deeply rooted in her home in Sri Lanka. That has always been home, and it still is for her. But us together as a family, kind of putting down roots in this last 10, 12 years has been a really important sort of period of our time. And next year, I don't know, like it feels like a bit of a transition.
Because you're going to spend some of it in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, we're going to spend a good chunk of it in Sri Lanka. And it does feel like God is stirring something. It feels like a bit of a pivotal year. So, you know, and that's another reason why, you know, FieldPartner is, I think, part of our journey as well. It feels like an important step. I haven't quite figured out how it's all going to fit together, but I really do believe it's the right thing for us to invest my time into, and Shiani's already investing her time. Very much
so, yeah.
So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
So this new phase that we're entering into as FieldPartner, we're going to be doing a relaunch of the website and of new content.
Yeah.
And Shiani's all geared up for social media side of it and promotion and that kind of thing. And then, well, we're looking forward to what you're going to continue to bring into it. And
so, my initial kind of work is going to be working with the team to kind of create that platform and to ensure that is working and the content it's really a blank canvas at the moment. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we've got a few ideas. But that's the priority, is really to get the platform up and running, kind of that learning platform, that kind of community space where people can connect to online. So that's going to be my focus initially, and up and running for a full-on launch in the early part of 2024.
Yay! Great. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks. Great. Great to hear a bit of your backstory and to see what you bring to FieldPartner as an enterprise, but also this particular coming year and the new launch. So thanks,
Christine. Okay.
We're very grateful the Lord brought you along and that you said yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks everyone for watching, and let's really welcome Ben and Shiani on board. Thanks. Bye.